like your praise dance.
Hello, everybody. What's up? My name is Anthony. Welcome to my Facebook Live. If y'all are hearing this in the background, this is Pure in Heart, and I just want to share this motivational Monday quote for you. And it goes like this: no matter how crazy or bleak the situation is, it will work out. Everything passes written in the book. And that is by Miss, I'm probably going to mispronounce this name, but Oksha Verkay. Sorry if I mispronounced that name. But that is actually a part of my YouTube series. Hey sis, that's part of my YouTube series. It's called Motivational Monday. So welcome to the year my life changed, part 2. Anthony here. So before I bring out my special guest that I have with me, I always give out a shout out to the weather. I didn't do that in my first video. I forgot. So I did it on my, I've done it on my YouTube videos. Hey Spencer, I've done it on my YouTube videos, but I did not do it on here. So I'm going to give a shout out to the weather. The weather was horrible today. It was. It rained like cats and dogs. Apparently it flooded somewhere in the DC area. So Maryland area, I was not liking you today. I was not liking you with the weather at all. Nope, not at all. So bad shout out to you. But anyway, welcome to my Facebook Live. I'm not going to keep you guys long at all. But before I start, I do want to talk about something that you guys probably know what happened. Hey, Kyle. Actor Cameron Boyce, who starred in Disney Channel television shows, he just recently passed, and he was at the age of 20. So just in case you guys don't know exactly of how he passed, the spokesperson for his family told CNN that he died in his sleep after a seizure resulting from an ongoing medical condition. Now, I don't think it's been reported as far as what that medical condition is, but dying from a seizure in your sleep, that actually can happen, which is what happened. So what that is called basically sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. So basically called, hey guys, SUDEP. That refers to deaths in people with epilepsy. Now again, we don't know if he had epilepsy, but he did die from a seizure. But I do want to talk on this topic because you can die from a seizure in your sleep, because people really don't know that. So not only can you die or get caused by injury from drowning or anything like that, but of course from your sleep. So what happens is a seizure may cause a person to have pauses in breathing. Your breathing is affected. If this pause lasts too long, they can reduce the oxygen in the blood to a life-threatening level. In addition, during a convulsive seizure, a person's airway sometimes may get covered or obstructed, leading to suffocation. Heart rhythm. Rarely a seizure may cause a dangerous heart rhythm or even heart failure. Other causes with SUDEP may result from more than one cause, a combination of both breathing difficulty and abnormal heart rhythm, so either or. And the main, looks like it's saying the main risk factors are uncontrollable frequent seizures, generalized convulsive seizures, and then other possible risk factors, again, may include seizures that begin at a young age, many years of living with epilepsy, missed doses of medicine, and drinking alcohol. So, for example, me, since I'm epileptic, I technically I can die from a seizure within my sleep. And I do think about that every now and again, sometimes a good bit of times. So I'm just like, because what I expressed last time in my first video, I've had seizures in my sleep to where I bit my tongue and chewed it up. Again, I will show pictures of that when it comes down. I'm talking on the E with my YouTube channel. Make sure you guys subscribe. I'm gonna put down a link so you guys can subscribe, like all my videos. I've already posted, I think, 3 or 4 videos now. But yes, that is always a concern of mine, because again, what if I have a seizure and I just don't wake up? Because again, that can happen. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But here are some steps that can reduce SUDEP. Of course, the most important step is to take your seizure medication, which is what I'm doing. I'm taking my seizure medication. I'm getting my at least 8 hours of sleep. And also I'm staying away, from the blinking lights, etc. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But our prayers again goes out to Cameron Boyce's family. That was a tragic death, because he was 20 years old. From what I read, he was in the process of about to start starting a new show, I believe. But again, our prayers and everything goes along with his family. But again, not going to keep y'all long, so I do want to bring in my special guest. It is none other than my mom, who has been with me all my life, who knows what I go through with my seizures. She's seen everything. So here she is. Everybody, let's give it up for Miss Lawana Holland, my mommy.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hey, what's up, everybody? Sitting here listening to Anthony brings back a lot of memories. Most of not things you really like to talk about, but as a parent, it's things you have to deal with. I think he mentioned in his first live, he spoke about things he recalled from having his seizures.
Yeah.
Some of them were a little
off, apparently.
Yeah, I told him, I said, how are you going to tell something when you were like out of it? You were like totally, yeah, because that's what happens with him. He's unconscious. And when it first happened to him, I was literally in shock. I mean, you can't imagine seeing your child and there's nothing you can do. Seizing, as he said, he had about 6 of them, 5 or 6, and they were consecutive. And all he could say is, what's happening to me? And I'm looking at him like, I knew what was happening, but I'm like, where did this come from? Because he had no known history of epilepsy. But moving forward a little bit, thinking back to things that happened when he was younger. So Anthony's a preemie. He was 3 months early. And a lot of times there are no known causes for seizures, but then there are as well. A person can have a seizure from a brain injury of some type, and then there's also genetics. So there's different, you can, so some of the explained ones or known ones is trauma to the brain or whatever, and others is genetic. So at the time, we didn't really know history on both sides of the family, but we found out that there is history on both this paternal and maternal side of the family. Several on the maternal side, on my side of the family, actually grew out of having the seizures, but the type of seizure Anthony has, or epilepsy he has, he will never grow out of it. On his father's side, there's also epilepsy in one of his aunts as well. And I think another one of his aunts, she grew out of it.
Yeah, she did grow out of it. So I was hoping that was going to be me, but apparently it's
and it can also skip over. Anthony has other siblings, and he is the only one of his siblings that has epilepsy. Which he was angry for a very, very long time, which he expressed. He was very angry about why me, why is this happening to me? I watched him go through his depression for years, and I'm just grateful that he's actually talking about it now, because he never talked about it. He didn't even want to see what it looked like for somebody to have a seizure. But I said, as a parent, you witness that, and then you grow up real fast on how to deal with it, because when it happened, again, he was totally, he seized several times. I knew I needed to call 911, but I actually was hyperventilating and trying to keep from having a panic attack. I was able to call 911, and luckily, I remembered to use, I didn't use the house phone. So if you have a landline, which most people don't, the best thing to do is to use a landline, because the transmission can get to EMS quicker than a cell phone, because it has to ping off the towers. So there was some confusion with that, because when I called the EMS units, there were two of them, they didn't know who had the jurisdiction to actually come to the call. So it was a few minutes. And once they arrived, Anthony was still unconscious at that time, but I was on the phone with 911, and they were able to calm me down, at which they told me to allow him, because the only thing you can do when someone's having a seizure is to allow them to have a seizure, but you also want to protect them from hitting their head and that type of thing, or hurting themselves. So what you don't do, the myth is to put a spoon in someone's mouth to keep them from swallowing their tongue. That's a no-no. You don't do that, because when someone is having a seizure, they're very strong. I was told where the words were used, stronger as an elephant. I mean, because you lose a finger. You put your, you try to put your hand in someone's mouth or prevent them from swallowing their tongue, but that's what happens when someone has a seizure. They do swallow their tongue, unfortunately, and that does alter the breathing. And sometimes people don't live through that, but they have to go through the process. There's nothing you can do, but do not stick a spoon in the mouth of someone having a seizure. What I do is I would always try to protect him from hitting his head. And most of the time I would literally just kind of kneel down beside him and let his head just, when he's going through his seizures, actually, his head would hit my lap. That way he wouldn't damage his brain anymore by hitting a floor, because that just would cause more trauma to the brain, doing it that way. And so he would go through his process. Once the seizing stops, then you roll the patient on his side, and then the airways will open up for them to breathe. And that's what you do. And you normally need to call 911, because 9 times out of 10 they've lost some oxygen to the brain, and most of us are not doctors, so we can't diagnose, oh, they're awake now, they're okay. That is probably not the best practice to do. You want to call. So each time he's had a seizure, that's what we do. We call 911. When he was in college, told all of his friends, roommates, call 911. And I would always make sure everybody was aware of what to do and how to handle it.
Right, because didn't mean to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was when I was talking to you guys last week, when I was trying to go over some symptoms of what happens with me when I do have my seizures, I didn't realize I stopped breathing. Mm-hmm. And I just my mom enlightened me a couple
Yeah.
days ago. I completely
Yeah,
stop
he's
breathing.
completely out of it. So he doesn't have a clue. Some people, when they have seizures, everybody deals with it differently. Some people actually lose their ability to literally lose their bowels. They urinate on themselves. They throw, I mean, it's a lot of things that can happen. Anthony's never experienced that. He basically it's funny, but it's not funny. Most of the time, well, all of the time that he sees when he comes to, he just kind of looks up and everybody, he's smiling, you know, and he's clueless as to what has gone on. And again, he's never seen himself, you know, but it's kind of horrific to see. It really is, and you're helpless. You can't really do anything about it. And it has, you know, it's affected him over the years. As far as his memory is concerned, because the part of the brain that where the electrical, for lack of better words, the electrical probes that are triggers that are in his brain that causes him to have the seizures is kind of deep inside. That's why he elected not to have surgery, because it was like a 50-50 chance that it would or would not work. So, or it could make things worse. So it would definitely affect his memory, and it could be to the point where he just, you know, couldn't remember anything, you know. So he elected not to do that and just decided, even though we've gone through several medications, that he's just going to deal with the medications that he takes. And even the medication he takes now, he has to have his blood tested every 6 months to check the levels in his liver, to make sure that everything is still working the way it should, because people have had liver failures just from medication for taking something that's saving your life. So there's always, you know, it's like something you constantly have to deal with, constantly have to be mindful of. There are a lot of different factors that affect what goes on with him. But he's learning to deal with it, and I'm really proud of him for doing that. Now, backing up, as I was saying initially, when he was born, he was a preemie. He was only 910 grams, so you can imagine how tiny he was. He wasn't fully developed. I don't know if that had a factor in the epilepsy. I don't know if, you know, growing up, he used to like to jump off of stuff. He hit his head a few times, just like a lot of kids do, jumping around. So you have to be careful of that as well. That could have been a factor, or it just could have been a genetic thing, which we're inclined to believe it was more so of, you know, of that, since we do have family members on both sides that have dealt with epilepsy. But you know, again, he's dealing with it much better now, and the fact that he's actually putting it out there for awareness, because in the African American community, this is something we don't really talk about, and a lot of times you see it on TV and people think, oh, somebody have a seizure, and all they see is somebody jerking, and they're thinking, oh, okay, then afterwards everything is okay. Well, it's really not, because when people seize, it takes a lot out of them. He loses all of his fine motor skills. I watched him trying to play tennis after he had a seizure. It was probably a couple of weeks after. His motor skills, fine motor skills and gross motor skills, they were not in sync with his brain. He couldn't even hit a ball. You know, his hand-eye coordination were totally off. And it drains the energy out of them mentally, physically. So it takes a lot out of them, and then for them to kind of come back around. And then, you know, as a parent or the families, we literally had to have somebody to watch him. You know, if I had to go to work or whatever, I would be home with him for a while. And if I had to go back to work, I had my brother to actually watch him, just to make sure, because when he goes through seizures, sometimes he doesn't know what's really going on. So he'll just try to continue to do things as normal, and he's fallen downstairs, not knowing how he could really have hurt himself. He had a seizure since being here in Maryland a few months ago. I was at work. Where I work, I'm not able to get phone calls most of the time, but God gave him the sense to run next door to my neighbor, and it was just ironic. I had just given some friends of mine, my neighbors, a spiel on what to do when somebody has a seizure. And one of my neighbors, she was actually in that little conversation, and she said, I remembered everything you told me. And he basically ran, he felt it. He knows he has the aura, he has the triggers, and he knew what was happening. He didn't know, he ran out of the house. He had no shoes on. I don't even know if he had pants on, but I don't think he had a shirt on. And he ran to the neighbor's house, and he was able to tell her he was about to have a seizure, and she just had him to sit down like I've asked her to, and just to make sure he wouldn't hit his head, and just to call 911. So she did, and they got a call to me, and when I got back, he was already at the hospital. But he had a grand mal seizure. So grand mal seizures, everybody, well, a lot of people have heard that term, but they're also called tonic-clonic, which is the jerking of the arms, the legs, the head, all of that. Now, when he was initially diagnosed, he was diagnosed as juvenile myoclonic, which actually supposedly happens to middle school children between the ages, it could be between the ages of 9 and 13 or 14. So during that juvenile,
that preteen
age. And the first doctor, that's what he diagnosed. And his first doctor actually was willing to take him off medication. He even had the audacity to ask him if he wanted to get off. And of course, I said absolutely no, because I looked at the EEG and saw that there was still spiking on it. And I just couldn't believe this doctor was ready to take him off medication to say he was okay. And had he done that, he very well could have died. Just if I wasn't one of those parents who just pushed the button and was like, no, absolutely not. Now, the neurologist that he ended up with later, she was not convinced that he ever had juvenile myoclonic. She said it was always tonic-clonic, which is grand mal, where you just literally everything in your body is seizing. So right now, as I say, his medications like him, he like them. They all get along. So one happy family in that one body, which is good, And as long as he gets his proper rest, takes his medication. And there were some times where medicines were making him have seizures, and even the medicine he's on now, he had to realize that you have to take this medicine the same time every day. He's thinking, oh, I need to take 4 pills a day, so maybe I'll take it early in the day, maybe I'll take it later in the day. And the neurologist said, no, medicine has to be in your body. It has to be a certain amount of medication, and when you're breaking that pattern, that medicine is not in your body the way it needs to be.
Because what I was initially doing, because I saw on the pill bottle, it said for me to take 2 pills of the lamotrigine, and then I was taking at that time topiramate. This is before I switched over to my current medicine now. I switched from the topiramate to the zonisamide. But when I was taking the lamotrigine, I took both of them. I took everything at night. So everything was at night. But again, when we did the blood levels, it was just like everything was low. And so that's when he asked me exactly when was I taking the medicine, and I told him everything at night. He said, no, that's probably the reason why you've had seizures during nighttime when you're sleeping, is because there's not enough medication going through your body. So he said that I need to take them in the morning, and I need to take them at night. So once I switched over from the topiramate to the zonisamide, that's when I did, of course. I take the zonisamide at night. I take 1 pill of the lamotrigine at night with the zonisamide. Then I take the lamotrigine in the morning. So in total, 3 pills each day. So, because at one point when it first started, I was taking 6.
No, when you first started, you were taking like 8 pills, I think it was. It was almost 10 pills.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
almost 10 pills a day.
It was a lot. Yeah, because
and he was angry about that. He was angry with the world.
I was angry with the world.
So he went through a phase, and I wanted to just hurt him, but I knew he was going through some stuff. he would get angry and he kind of popped a few holes in the walls. That's just how angry he got.
Yeah,
he did.
I did.
And I wasn't happy about that. But that's just how, the depression, the anger, all of that had set in, because again, one minute he's blaming God, next minute, why me, and
I really, really blamed, especially my dad's side of the family, because that's when I found out, because before I didn't know on my mom's side that there was some family members that had epilepsy. I just knew on my dad's side. And I just was very, very, very angry with my dad's side. And so I was just like, why me? Why not any of my other siblings? All of them are okay, but me, I'm dealing with this and nobody understands. And like she said, I was furious. I really was.
But I had to also make him realize that even though he has that, God has allowed him to deal with it, and that even with having it, he knows when he's going to have it. There are a lot of people that are epileptic and they seize every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone through tons of medication and nothing controls them. Now, can you imagine doing that every day? These people have no life. And I'm talking about infants.
Yes,
deal with that. But he knows when he's going to have it. So when he feels that aura, he'll, I was taking him to work one day and he said, Mom, something is not feeling right. And I always ask him, what's going on? And he said his head is always really hot from the inside out. So you can imagine like your brain is on fire or burning.
Hey,
that, he said, I said, you think you're going to have an episode? And he said, yes. Luckily, we were only maybe a mile from the house, and I turned around, and he has what we call his emergency pill,
mm-hmm.
which is basically Ativan, and that's what they give you when you go to the emergency room to actually control the seizures.
Mm-hmm.
And he took one of those, and
sometimes
it's knocked out, and he's been so out of it sometimes that he's actually taken two.
Yeah, because sometimes I've gotten so scared that one doesn't do enough, and I shouldn't have done this, but I took two, and I was just pretty much out for the whole day. Like I was like a zombie trying to get up, and even the next day, because you don't realize how powerful medication is. Hey Roxy, you just don't realize how powerful medication is. And it's crazy. Oh, I wanted to bring up a point, because I am a part of a epilepsy Facebook group, and I read so many stories, and just like my mom said, you don't realize that they do have seizures. People have a lot of them, and I've read where this one child, it was so horrible. I think she was 7, 8, 9, one of those. She was having 6, 7 a day. And imagine and it's just like, these are grand mal that she's having. These kids are having grand mal seizures, several a day. It's like, I guess I can say I'm blessed to only have at least only one, and then I'm done and I'm tired out and boom, that's it. But these people are having grand mal seizures, like several, and it's like they can't stop. And then some of those cases, they have they're on so many different types of medications. It's just so sad to hear. And that's why with my case, I've learned not to again say why me, because there are people that are worse off than me, a lot worse off than me. And people a lot of those people in that group, because I'm blessed and I'm able to drive, because when you're epileptic, technically
a lot of times you're not supposed to drive, but since his is controlled, he does.
And so I'm blessed that I can, but some of these kids and stuff, they will grow up where they can never ever drive. Like, can you imagine high school, you can't drive, you have to depend on people. And that was another thing. Like, I hate depending on people, but people like that, those kids and stuff, they have to literally depend on people for food and clothing because they can't do anything. They have to they have to depend for just transportation, and it's just so sad. It breaks my heart.
Yeah, it alters your life. It alters how you do things. I think Anthony had mentioned before, there's certain things when you are epileptic that you really not supposed to do that could cause triggers. And I think he mentioned about the strobe lights.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the tests that will be done when you are having seizures. They actually will attach all the probes to you. They put it on your to your head. And then parts of your body where your pressure points are, and they actually try to make you have a seizure so that they can see exactly, once they get the readout, to see exactly what's going on. And so strobe lights are part of it, and I've seen him have reactions to the strobe lights.
Have I had a grand mal when they did that, or because I don't know.
You didn't have a grand mal, but there was some jerking.
Okay.
Yeah, there was definitely some jerking. But yeah, that's one thing. The strobe lights, that's what you don't want to do. So yeah, certain movies, of course, going to certain venues where there's going to be like a club or something.
Like a rave. I would never be able to do that.
And also, you don't think about this, but I know somebody's child that died in a shallow tub of water, had a seizure. So actually, and technically you don't leave kids, in the bathroom, but when you don't know, but he can't go swimming. He can't get in. Anthony loved water. We had no clue that, Anthony was epileptic prior to that happening to him when he was in his freshman year. Had no clue whatsoever, but he had, I was taking him he was taking swim lessons, jumping off into the deep end of the water, and that could have gone so wrong, but we had no clue.
Just want to answer Dante's question. He says they're like a spectrum to epilepsy similar to that of autism.
Well, some, as I said before, some forms of epilepsy it's one of those things where you just don't know. Now, it's interesting that you said similar to autism, because when he was initially diagnosed by the first neurologist, that called it juvenile myoclonic. So supposedly juvenile myoclonic epilepsy affects these preteens who have above average IQs, relatively intelligent, this type of thing, outgoing and whatnot. So you in this certain category. So supposedly that's what it is. But his latter neurologist, she said that she just didn't see that. She just said it was basically the tonic-clonic. So in some instances it could, because there are some kids, they do have it, they have it in that age, and there is such a thing as the JME, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. So that is true for that group. And then you have babies that have it. They go through a process. I can't remember the name of it, but there is a name for when children have it.
Hey.
There's also, hey Tasha, there's also other forms of seizing with the epilepsy, is when it's a staring. It's called focal. So I didn't know for a while, sometimes I'd be talking to Anthony and he would just stare, wouldn't say anything. And I'm like, don't you hear me talking to you? Whatever. And then I started reading more. And so it's a staring thing. So sometimes you're talking to him and he's looking at you, but nothing is coming out. But it's like he hears what you're saying, and sometimes he may not. Because if he's having, and that's a seizure, it's a form of a seizure where a person just stares and they can't say anything because they're in the middle of having a seizure. But it's not the tonic-clonic or the jerking, but it's actually where they're actually just staring and not saying anything. And most times he doesn't remember. He really doesn't. He has no recollection of what was said, what was done, or anything. And you have to kind of just, allow him to come back into focus or whatever. And at that point, he's really not in danger of hurting himself, but it does happen. It's happened a lot.
before we continue on, so I did say back when I was last week and I was talking about the USC tour, I was wrong about that. Like I said, I apparently I was wrong on a lot of stuff because I don't remember. So she can actually enlighten on exactly what happened with that tour.
That was oh my goodness. So one thing we also noticed with Anthony, when he gets overheated, that could be another trigger for having a seizure. So we were at University of South Carolina in Columbia. We had toured a few places, few of the buildings, and we were about to tour one of the female dorms, just so people can get a view of what they look like. As we were walking, I noticed his leg jerked or arm or something, and I looked and I'm like, I think it was the leg, and I was like, oh, maybe he tripped, he stumbled or tripped over something. And then I saw it again, and I just said, oh my God, this is not going to happen now. And so he didn't say a word, and as we got closer to the dorm, and his whole body jerked at that point. And mind you, we're walking to get into the building, and he looked at me, he said, Mom, this cannot be happening. And I said, okay, just try to remain calm. I said, I'm praying that it goes away. And I was just praying that it would, but it didn't. We got to the building. We walked into the building. We got to walked up a flight of stairs, and there were about maybe 10 or 15 of us on that tour. Mm-hmm. And then the young ladies that were actually going to allow the students to look at their room. So as they were conversing and we stood there in the hallway, Anthony just went into a full-blown grand mal seizure. And at that point, he buckled down, fell to the floor. So I knew what I had to do. I dropped down with him. I allowed his head to seize on my lap. And so they had called security to call 911. Well, where we were located initially, they couldn't even, 911, the EMS couldn't even find where we were. But there was a parent that was on the tour, and she said, I'm a doctor. I can help. So I'm thinking, okay, good. So I asked for them. And another thing, cold compresses are good, like a damp towel or something to put around your pressure points here, around the neck, forehead, under the armpits, that type of thing. So I had them gathering those type things. And she kneeled down to help, and I'm thinking she's, medical doctor. She said, I'm a doctor. I didn't know what kind of doctor she was. And she kneeled down and she yelled for somebody to get a spoon. So I'm looking at her. I said, no, you do not put spoons in the mouths of people having a seizure. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I said, no, you don't do that. And one of the young ladies, she brought back a plastic spoon. Now think about it. When somebody has a seizure, they bite a plastic spoon. 9 times out of 10, they could swallow it. They're going to cut their mouth up. They could potentially take part of your finger off. A lot of things could go wrong with that, and that's why that's something you don't do anymore. And that was us as a people not being educated, because even back in the day when people would have seizures, especially in the Black community, most folk thought that somebody having a seizure was crazy. They thought that they were mentally, off. And a lot of people were institutionalized because there was a lack of knowledge as to what was really going on. And then some that were having this, they didn't want anybody to know. And I know that happened on my mom's side of the family. There was a relative that had one and didn't want anybody to know that they, were having these seizures. That person later died. So it's good for people to be, the awareness, it has to be there. You have to let people know what's going on, because that's what's going on with us, the lack of knowledge, the lack of awareness, the lack of wanting to discuss it, because it's like, I don't want anybody to know. He went through this thing. He didn't want anybody to know he was epileptic. He was adamant. I would buy him the medical alert necklaces. I would buy him the bracelets. I don't know how many I went through. And back then, they weren't always so cute. They had the little red emblem on it. And he said, everybody's going to know. They're going to pick at me. And I'm like, I don't care what people say. This is your life. and he would break them, you know, I mean, purposely, because I just couldn't figure out how they would break every time I turned around. Because he had dreads back then, and he would always use that as an excuse. It got caught in my hair, and I'm like, no, there's no way. And then he finally said, I don't want to do it because.
And the thing was, back then, like, people, they weren't going to pick at me because people didn't know. And then as soon as people knew, a lot of people were very protective and made sure everything was okay, made sure, you know, was I okay? Was I good? Because, and I wanted to bring this up, back when I was in band at Spartanburg High School, I ended up having a seizure. I think it was out on the field during practice. Yeah, it was. And I had to, of course I had to leave. And I think I don't know if I damaged my drum or anything like that, because I was on the drum line. I can't remember now. But I had a seizure. I had to leave. And it's just a mess. I've had seizures at school. I've had seizures at work. It's just been crazy. Yeah. But I'll tell you guys some different stories later when I get to that point within my channel of the E, which is epilepsy. But back to what you were saying.
Where did I leave off? I think
you left off with
just the awareness of it. Yeah.
The
awareness of it. We just, as a people, we don't want to talk about it, and that's really, you know, I think people that, you know, lost their lives because of not wanting to talk about their condition. It didn't have to be if they had just let somebody know that it's a medical, you know, condition. And again, back in the day, people were locked up, put in a mental institution because they were deemed as being mentally insane, and that wasn't the case. They just needed to be medicated.
Right.
They just had, you know, a medical condition. It's neurological. It is in the brain. It definitely, you know, all of that is neurological, but that doesn't make you crazy. You know, you have a medical condition. You take medication for it, do what needs to be done, and you go about your business. Some, it's easier for some than others. As I said, for those that unfortunately, you know, sees every day, which is very sad, you know, to know that people actually, that there's no medications that actually work to control, but Anthony he's on medication that actually controls his seizures. So
right.
So that's a good thing.
So if you are epileptic, or if you know somebody that's epileptic, just make sure you let people know. Don't be ashamed. Right. Don't hide anything. Just, again, speak up if you're about to have a seizure, because I've learned that for a fact. It's no point in hiding. Nope. Don't hide. Just, if something is about to happen, you let people know ASAP. That way your life can be saved, because you don't want to hide something, then you end up losing your life, because right. That's, you know, you just can't. So, any questions from anybody? Because I'm going to wrap this up, because I didn't anticipate this going this long. But any questions, anything like that? I know, I think we answered Dante's questions. If we didn't, Dante, you can.
Yeah, let me know if I didn't answer. I tried answering to the best of my ability. But
and if we didn't, then I'll.
It's not autism.
Hey, Miss Iva.
Just don't know. Yeah. Again, there's different causes for seizures, and sometimes there is no explanation for it. Some things are known and some things are not. And it can happen at any age, from newborn. I was reading, you know, people as old as 65 years old can just become epileptic. So you just don't know.
Right.
But just, if there's one thing you get out of this, just do not put anything in the mouth of somebody having a seizure.
Hey, C. Murray.
Nothing. Don't put anything in the mouth. Allow them to seize. Keep them from hitting their head. Roll them on their side. Once they stop seizing, to allow the airways to open, call 911.
Thank you, Natasha.
That's the best thing you can do to help somebody, and then let the professionals come in and do what they need to do.
Right.
And always, again, I would definitely recommend calling 911, and even if a person comes back too, just because you never know how much oxygen is lost. You know, the lack of oxygen in the brain, you know, that causes problems. So you want to make sure the person is checked out so that you know everything is okay there.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm going to again post on this video my link to my YouTube page. Everybody subscribe, like all my videos. I did post up again, like I said earlier. I've got a quote for Motivational Monday. Next week, I will post my first video on YouTube in the series dealing with suicide. So again, everybody, I need you guys to subscribe. I need you guys also to share this video, share it so people can know my story, so you guys can hear what's going on. I mean, I know it's kind of long, but it's very informative, put it that way. So please just share this. Can you share now, maybe later? How long did it take for doctors to find the right med? So it took, oh my gosh,
it took a few years.
It took several years.
He initially started out on one medication. I think it was Keppra.
Yeah, I was on Keppra.
He was on Keppra initially. He was on Keppra for a short period of time because he kept having seizures.
Actually, I was on Depakote first.
Depakote, yeah. That's right.
I was on Depakote.
He went from Depakote to Keppra.
And Keppra is evil.
So when you're transitioning from one medication to another, you just can't stop taking it. You have to be weaned off of one and then start gradually implementing the new one. But he was on medications that was either causing him to have seizures or it just wasn't strong enough for his body to prevent him from having. So that actually, it's like he would be okay with the medicine for a minute and then it just would stop working for whatever reason. It just didn't work. So he went from those two, and then they started doubling. It was like, okay, you need 2 pills in your body to prevent you from having these seizures. So that went on. So literally from the time he was 15 up until his latest medication was what, 2 years ago? No, a year ago.
No, it's like a few months
ago. Yeah. So it literally, it could change throughout.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
Because again, it could get to the point where it's in your body and you're like, your body rejects it, or either it's not enough to control what's going on.
Because we've had to adjust levels and everything like that. Because initially, and again, I'm gonna let you guys go because I know we've gone over my time, but I was initially on topiramate and lamotrigine after for some years during my college years. I think high school, college, we finally got on a good regimen. And I wanted to get off topiramate because topiramate had so many negative side effects. Topiramate was the one that had the kidney stones, the
affects your memory, it affects your weight.
Yes.
Because you lose weight.
Hair loss, your anxiety,
motor
depression.
skills, your I mean, it affects a lot.
It had a whole bunch of
stuff. And your liver.
Yeah.
It can cause liver damage.
Yes.
So a lot of people are like, you need to get Anthony off that medication, but that was the only thing that worked.
So they finally, I'm taking a newer drug now. This is the zonisamide, and I'm taking still the lamotrigine.
Yeah, so he's still on 2.
And so it's helping as far as my memory is concerned. I think that's just going to be permanent, you know, because I've had the topiramate for so many years. But I mean, at least I have not forgotten my family. So yeah, because that was a big fear that I was gonna forget like people and everything like that. But yeah, so again, I'm gonna post the link on this thread, and again, share my link that I'm gonna post to my YouTube channel. Again, you guys will not be disappointed, and I'm really, really passionate about this. As far as my
finally.
as far as my Facebook Live videos, I'm not gonna do that many because I am in school, so I've got school comes first before anything, because I'm paying for that.
Yes.
So this will probably be my last Facebook Live for a couple weeks, or maybe I may do another one next month or whatever.
Do it when you can.
I'll do it when I can. So, but again, I will be posting on my YouTube though. Every 2 weeks, I'll post a new video. And then every Monday, I'm going to post my Motivational Mondays. That's my quotes. So,
tell them your YouTube.
And my YouTube channel is called SPADE, SPADE. Now, if you Google, if you search it in YouTube, it's going to pull up a Chinese guy. But that's because he has a lot of subscribers. He's got like over 200-some thousand subscribers. That's okay. That's why I'm posting my link. So you guys can just click it, and then you guys can just subscribe from there instead of trying to search all over YouTube to find me. But again, it's called SPADE, and that's why, as you can see, I've changed my profile picture to SPADE, and that's what it stands for: suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and epilepsy. So again, I'm speaking on all those topics. I'm going to have more people coming in. I'm going to interview, like having Skype interviews and everything. And so, yes, again, share, comment, and like.
I'm so proud of you.
Where?
I was going now. Michelle had posted.
Oh, I didn't see it, but
yeah.
Thank you, Miss Michelle. Thanks, Roxy. But I'm gonna let you guys go because goodness, it's 50 minutes. So
a good 50 minutes.
A good 50 minutes, but my computer is about to die too. I'm like at 5%. So it was so lovely to have my mom here. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And talk to you guys later. This will also be on my YouTube channel as well. I have a section for my Facebook Live videos. If you have any questions or anything like that, comment, DM me. Again, subscribe and share. All right, talk to you guys later.
Thank you, everybody. Peace.
Peace.